12:01, so why don't we get started, and Chris will continue to invite people in as they trickle in. So thank you so much for joining us this Friday for our microcommunity fireside chat. Our agenda is really straightforward. We're hoping to introduce you both to the OB Division's microcommunity initiative and hope that you might be interested in joining us in some capacity. We'll then turn it over to 3 successful current microcommunities who will tell you a little bit about how theirs organizes. And then we're hoping to get into a conversation of just what works, what doesn't work, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We want to leave enough time for Q&A at the end, but we do have the chat open now. And Chris Myers is monitoring that. So please, by all means, put messages in the chat as you think of them. And then we'll also make time for the Q&A at the end. On that note, if you'll allow me to do a brief introductions to the OB Microcommunity Initiative, this started approximately 5 years ago because we realized as the OB division that a lot of our organizing, well, actually all of our organizing was really top down, these one-time events that we would put on or we would facilitate. And we really wanted a bottom-up initiative where people can self-organize and find their people. And so this is that. Chris Myers and I are elected reps at large. We're both behind this effort at the moment. In the past, it was Kate Zapay and Fidel Mata. And I point that out only to say that we're really trying to put energy behind this thing and keep growing it. If any of you are ever thinking about running for rep at large, that could be another way that you could get involved. So our goal is for you to self-organize in whatever way you see fit, whether that's around a geographic region, a topic area, an identity, an affinity group, whatever you want to do, we want to support you. And specifically, we hope to support you in 3 ways. The first is we just want to help with promotions and connections. And so we are listing microcommunities on our website. If you are not currently on there, we'd love to have you listed as well. And we'll also reach out to you before Academy to see if there's specific meetings or key PDWs that you want people to know about. In addition, we are hoping to offer more support and guidance on how to start a microcommunity and how to grow it. This is part of that effort. And so we will also be transcribing this conversation and posting it on YouTube. If you weren't able to make it today or you want to send it along, nudge some co-organizers to get involved in this. And then the third effort that we engage in, and I think most people have heard about, if they've heard about this initiative and are most excited about, is we are trying to facilitate in-person meetups. One way we do that is our AOM OB Division Coffee Hour, where we take a select number of micro communities, depends on how many we can squeeze into the venue every year, and then we find an inspiring venue and welcome you to come for 1 hour with 25 to 30 of your closest friends and members. For example, last year we did it at the Copenhagen Botanical Gardens. This year it will be at a tea house in Philadelphia. Because this is becoming more popular and space is limited, we have also now launched a sponsorship program where if you want to self-organize a meetup, whether that's at Academy or in your own town, you can reach out to us and we can reimburse some of that and help with the financing. Any and all questions about this, please reach out to Chris Myers and I. Chris has also posted the OB Division website. I'll make a very small caveat there. We have been in talks with AOM, as have all the other divisions, and we have been promised that in the next month, the website will finally be updated and we will have more control. So check it out now, but it's pretty bare bones. We already have all the text and information. It will be posted on there. We're just waiting for AOM Central to give us that permission. That's enough for me with this. I would love to turn it over to our 3 micro-community hosts. And I thought maybe we can just do it in alphabetical order by first name to keep it casual. So I would love each of them to introduce themselves and their micro-community and what they get out of it. And Bobbi, maybe we start with you.
Gladly. Well, good morning. Thank you everyone for joining. And a huge thank you to Kira and Chris for organizing and bringing us all together. I'm Bobbi Thomason. I'm a professor at Pepperdine Graziosi Business School. And my community and Rita's overlaps quite a bit. So I'm going to keep my remarks focused on an in-person writing retreat. So it started very much from an online community that Rita will tell you about. But essentially, this was something good in my days that I just loved and wanted more of. And it really came from an off-the-cuff comment online saying, we all agreed we would like more of it. And wouldn't it be nice to move from online to in person? And after that off the cuff comment, because I'm in Malibu, and I used to live in the Northeast. And I thought, wouldn't this be a nice place to invite folks when it's still snowy in other parts of the country and world? And so a few months later, 30 women gathered. So it's women of OB, so women in management and OB departments. And we came together in Malibu for a writing retreat. And as Kira mentioned in the overview, the writing and the retreating are just as important. So it is time to have focused writing, but there is also time for long meals, long breaks. We do dinner by the beach over sunset so that there is time to connect, but also space to feel awe and happiness and like there's a little bit of a treat and something rejuvenating in your day. So I get a ton out of just the energy and the connection and happiness. And I just love that there is a space where we can get work done. In those breaks, we also strategize and share information about, getting through a review or going up for a promotion. But sometimes we talk about, life, and these women have become not just professional allies and co-authors, but friends. So really, in summary, I look forward to talking more about it, but it was a matter of saying, this is something good in my days, and how do I get more of it?
Thank you so much. Jan, you want to go next?
Yeah, well, thanks so much all for being here. I will say I feel like a little bit of an imposter because I've only recently stepped into helping to now support this micro community together with Kira. So Kira, you could also speak to whatever it is that I'm missing out on. The May meeting was started close to 25 years ago. It was born out of a session in December 2003 of a bunch of meaningful work scholars who said, we're all so scattered and it's not really clear for us like who we are as a community, where we belong in the literature. And wouldn't it be nice if we had a space where we could all come together and support each other so that we have a shared sense of belonging in our work, but then also on a personal level. And so from that, in 2004, the first May meeting was born. It's a 2 to 3 day conference that rotates locations every year. That's done on purpose. There's a central organizing person. In the last 25 years, that was Amy Wrzesniewski, who's the founder and who's been nourishing that, who's now handed this over to Kira and I to continue maintaining. We always co-organize with a local host, which helps a great deal in the financing, helps a great deal in just having someone on the ground, because it's really important to make sure that the venue works out and so on. And then at the conference itself, we try to keep it relatively small, which has its own challenges, but we try to stay within about 30 people. What that means is that everybody who attends typically also brings a piece of research to workshop. There's different ways of how you can workshop a piece of research, but in most cases, it's early stage, pre-publication, typically even pre-submission to a journal. And then we come together, like Bobbi mentioned. It's of course not always just about the research. There's plenty of time in the schedule to connect, to chat, to complain to each other about the ups and downs of academic life and personal lives that intersect with academic lives. There's time and space for weird activities. If you ever want to play charades as an academic and want to embarrass yourself, think of playing charades with constructs in the academic literature. And then think of doing that in front of 30 of your peers. That sounds like a lot of fun. If that sounds like a lot of fun, you can play it with your own friends as well. But so there's plenty of space as well for connection and laughter, and a place where personally for me, I've also found a home.
Thank you so much. And Rita.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one with the imposter syndrome today, because I also am just somebody who has been very fortunate to come into this role. We're part of, as Bobbi mentioned, the Women of Organizational Behavior group. Just to give a quick little background on how the group started. It started originally, I believe it was 2017. There was an AOM session called Nevertheless She Persisted. It was for women academics. Primarily, it was off of a little term that happened after Hillary Clinton lost the election. And it was started, I think, a lot of the folks out of University of Michigan, but I think especially Catherine DeSellis, Dolly Chugg, some other folks. It was an amazing session, and people like, we want this to continue. How do we make it continue? Well, back in, late 2010s, you did a Facebook group. So we did a Facebook group. And I think many of us are still on Facebook strictly because of this group and some of those like those. So the group started, it was just a chance. The way the group is defined, because I think that's important to make sure you keep your, kind of boundaries on your group, is it's for women academics. So we do not allow PhD students. You need to be a faculty member somewhere along the way. Most of the folks, OB, management, we don't discriminate that way. We've had a couple marketing people that are part of our group. But the Facebook group was for everything. And, kind of questions you want to ask, teaching, life, research, balance, tenure, whatever it was. And then what happened was pandemic happened. And actually, Dolly Chugg out of NYU was writing her second book. She was having a little bit of, I think, writer's block or whatever. She goes, she throws on our Facebook group, I'm going to do a writing retreat. Here's the Zoom link. I'm going to be morning and afternoon for 2 weeks. Anybody wants to come join us. Anybody in the group. There was about 20 of us that were kind of the OGs of that group, the beginning group of that group. I will tell you at the time, I owe my career to this group. I came out of a dean's position where my research ground to a halt. I had 2 years to get 3 publications to keep my job. And I went back to faculty, very much on my decision to go back to faculty, but I had to get my research primed again. And that was really challenging. So I found a bunch of kindred spirits. And what happened was everybody found this, especially during COVID, I think it really helped. And it was just a group. You bring your own work. We use the Pomodoro method, which I did not know before this group. Work for 25 minutes, 5-minute break. We do that, repeat that 4 or 5 times a session. And that is what our sessions are. It was so successful that many of us are like, we need to keep this going. And, Dolly, of course, being the busy person she is, other things, she did a Google calendar and said, whoever wants to host, you could be the host. Your responsibility is to show up and keep the time for everybody and kind of keep everybody organized. In February, I think we were 5 years doing this. And it has continued. And it is literally during the pandemic, especially, but at certain times, it has literally been worldwide. So we've had people start, I'm in the East Coast, start as early as 4:00 in the morning, East Coast time. And I know Bobbi will usually wrap us up late in the day. I think you were out there late yesterday. I can tell you we've had 3 books, hopefully a 4th book coming, hopefully next year to add to the group. We've had, I think, 4 or 5 babies, hundreds of publications off of it. I know, I've had at least 5+ since this group has started. We've literally become friends. I've had people literally come to my house, from the group that I met when they got off the airplane and I picked them up at the airport. That's how tight some of these relationships have become. So just a wonderful group. It's a come as you are. And it's, you don't have to stay, if we do 2-3 hour blocks for our Zooms, you could come late, leave early, whatever it is. And it's really been something that I know for me it was a lifeline when I needed it most. And this community has continued to provide me with this wonderful structure that helps me do my job well. And even great friends that I know I will have for many years to come.
So thank you so much. I thought we'll start a conversation between the 3 of you. Feel free to unmute yourselves however you want to do this. One question that's been coming up in the chat is any specifics you can offer about what your groups are doing seem to be particularly of interest to people. But yeah, I thought we'd start the conversation with the good, the bad, and the ugly. You decide which of those you want to take, but your audience are people who are thinking about doing this themselves. Help them out.
I'm glad to jump in with some of the good with a hope to also speak to some of these questions. And if I don't fully answer them in my good, then we'll get to that in Q&A and happy to say more. One of the things that I think is really good about our community is that we have set up the bounds of women of organizational behavior being few or female. And within, if you see yourself as OB, so if you're someone that's somewhat strategy or somewhat marketing, but you see yourself as being within OB, come on in. We do set the bounds of being faculty. So one thing that's really important about our group is that it is peers, and particularly because our group is women, and we know women do so much caregiving outside of work and at work. We want this to be a group where it really is peers looking out for each other. And it's also not performative. And so I think that the peer element helps with that. But once we've set those bounds, anyone who wants to come can come. And that is the case on the Zoom, that is the case in person. And so I feel really proud that we have a space. There are so many, I think, like small invite only conferences in our field that can be very elite. And so I love the inclusiveness of like, we've defined who we are. And if that speaks to you, we would love to have you. The come as you are is something we take very seriously. For me, Rita saw me a few hours ago this morning in my pajamas. The dog crashed the Zoom. My daughter crashed the Zoom. And that is pretty much par for the course. And I dropped off when it was time to make breakfast and head to elementary school. And I love that's, there's no need to put on airs with one another. We all have our versions of what showing up as we are is. That's, mine includes no makeup, a kid, and a dog. It also is quite interdependent. Anyone can be writing on whatever they want. So people are doing cases, people are doing HBRs, people are doing books, people are doing peer review in all sorts of journals. And so because we set up sort of a structure of these Pomodoros when we're online, we do Pomodoros in person, it's very replicable. So I think the effort of hosting, when I host on Zoom or even putting this event on in person, which does require some work, because the task is interdependent, it does not feel like a heavy lift. So those are some of the good.
I'm happy to jump in. I think the biggest good for me has been having an opportunity to give back. I think I've been the beneficiary of strong communities that I have been part of, but never really figured out what it takes to sustain a community. Like, it's nice to be part of something that already exists that you happen to slot into. But there's this like nagging feeling of crap, like at some point I ought to also do something about that. And it's not enough to just be a leech on the system. Like, I also have to contribute and build the system, not just for myself, but also for other people. And so being able to take on this role is really meaningful in that regard. It's also a big honor, like being asked to be the person, or in our case, like a part of a group that maintains the group that's been really important for people, and ensuring that there's continuity and that it continues to be this important place for people to feel like they can belong and to feel like they can develop. It's really it's a deep source of meaning. I think that also comes with, I'm going to do a little transition into, but the bright side, as we love doing in OB, but the bright side has a double-edged sword, and there's a dark side to it as well. And I think the dark side is the sense of responsibility also means that you really, you want to be very thoughtful and careful about how you make decisions, because you care very deeply about maintaining this community. At the same time, that responsibility also comes with a burden. That it's not just a cognitive burden, like it's not just the work that ends up going into it, but also like, I really don't want to screw this up. And that means, like you're second guessing yourself, or you just really want to check in or double check, I think, in a way that I probably wouldn't do with other domains in my life. Like, when I plan a birthday party, I don't think I think as carefully about who attends and what they care about, and how we make this as meaningful as for a birthday party, which makes a lot of sense. But it is a tax in organizing something that is not quite as straightforward.
And I'll jump in at the end of this again. A lot of wonderful things. I do love, and I giving credit to those who kind of started this. I think early on, and so if you're looking to replicate this early on, it doesn't matter who you are, what school you're at, what project you're working on, how you are dressed. So even say early on when we did this, some people used it just to block 25 minutes to go get a shower and feel like a human again. And putting that freedom in there, I think has just established the culture early. So that's the nice part, is it doesn't matter what school you're at. And again, a lot of Bobbi and Jon both mentioned there's a lot of conferences and things we do where, there can be the pecking order. Everybody is the same. We all learn from each other. So, which is wonderful. And, sometimes that double-edged sword is we have become friends. We have had loose, trying to maintain some structure, and that in some ways, yes, this is professional, even though we want it to be lighter. And there's times where people need that. I've had people come on, especially because we are online, things that are happening, everything happening. We have a couple of our colleagues that are in Minnesota and all the challenges that they've had the past few months, and both professional challenges as well as personal challenges. And they wanted to talk and and had a friendly community. And I think that's one of the challenges and Jon kind of even talked about that taking over is, where do you let people have a little bit of freedom and have a little loose on any rules you have there versus keeping the structure and the task at hand, in our case, trying to get your work done, and trying to balance both of those. Ours has been very interdependent. I'm in no way a leader. I'm just the person who tends to do more of the Zooms because it gave me structure. Anyway, this is how I get my work done. So I've kind of just evolved in that. And I think there's times where you have to look, what is this group for you? For me, again, I really do. This is my secret sauce to get my job done. So I'm doing it. I tell people for selfish reasons. Why do I show up every 9 o'clock on the East Coast every day that I'm not teaching? It's because I need this structure, and that's just works for me. And I think and there's times I've been by myself, during times when people are on vacation, or like I did not go to AOM last year. So I was by myself. I was still there at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, that's the one thing, if you are doing one of these, and especially if you're either taking over or starting your own, if you're looking at just because you think everybody's going to love this and come join you, you might be disappointed. I think this is what I want to do for me. And you guys want to come along, love to have you. You are wonderful and amazing, please. But, there are going to be times where, you're going, okay, am I the only one here who wants to do this? So I could see that being a challenge. And, I think in our case, for a lot of us who've done this for a while, is to want to keep it going. And hopefully there's others that are going to come behind that will take it over to make it go, something like the May meeting where it's continued for decades. So we'll see what happens. We're still a newbie on the being 5-6 years old. So
with that, let's maybe transition to advice. I would love to push you a little bit on the logistics, because I love how inclusive we are and all that. But I also know Jan spent the last 2 weeks putting together Costco lists of snacks he needs to buy and negotiating with Enterprise to rent minivans. So especially for the in-person, but really all of them, give us a little bit of the nitty-gritty and the logistics on top of other advice.
I feel like you warm called me, Kira, so I'm happy to, we do this with our students. If we're the recipients, we ought to reciprocate. So organizing an in-person event is a lot of work. In our case, it starts with figuring out where we're going to do this event. The event has to be in May. It's called the May meeting. You can't do it in April. So you have to figure out what dates work for people. So you try to figure out ahead of time, ideally, what are possible dates. Things change in academic calendars. We want to invite a large group of people, but we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to attend. And then you try to find a local partner. Often we at each meeting we try to seed it, and we say, look, if in future years you'd like to co-organize, please let us know. What it requires is a financial commitment from the host organization. So whatever university they're at that day are able to provide some financial support. We should talk about the money part of this too. It's expensive to put on these events. Kira posted in the chat, the May meeting runs at about $10,000 to $15,000 just for the event itself. It does not include flights. We do not pay for any flights. But we do pay everything once you make it to the airport that is closest to the venue itself. And so once you figure out a date and then you figure out a location, you have to figure out a venue that requires people on the ground going to different venues. We care very deeply about having a place where all of us can live relatively comfortably, but not too comfortably. It's nice if it maintains a bit of a rustic feel, needs to have common meeting spaces, right? Because we want to have the opportunity to come together as one group, the opportunity to break into smaller groups. Bonus points if it's in nature so that we can do nature walks or small hikes and the like. And opportunities for us to bring our own snacks and beverages, because in the evening times, it's also really helpful while still having full catering while on site. So you can see the list of requirements for a meeting like that is quite long, and it can break the bank. Luckily, there are places like this that exist. Some of them are called retreat centers. Some of them are meditation centers. A lot of religiously affiliated places have centers like this that are like old monasteries or the like, where this works quite well. But that takes a lot of time. And then the next step is bringing together this group of people that are going to attend. Something that fits probably into the category of the bad and the ugly. The main meeting is intentionally small. I think once you reach more than 30 people, it starts getting really difficult to still have the feeling of an intimate community, the feeling that everybody can talk to one another, everybody has the ability to workshop a piece of research. With that, every year is the question, well, who's going to attend the main meeting? And how do you find the trade-off between bringing new people into the community, which we want to do, but also maintaining the community, the people that have attended for years? And that is a really challenging trade-off, because that just requires a very, very thoughtful and sensitive touch. And so that's probably, I would say, the number one hardest challenge about the main meeting is like it's capped at 30 people. Any more than that, it loses what makes it so special. But making that decision. When it comes to then actually to organizing the event itself, you have to put together a schedule. The expectation is that everybody brings some piece of research to connect. What does that mean? It means that you have to figure out how many long talks are there, short talks, maybe smaller workshop pieces, fitting everybody into a 2-day schedule, making sure that everybody's dietary restrictions are being taken care of, making sure that everybody's transportation from the airport is being taken care of, that we have cars going. We typically rent cars and ask people to drive themselves if they can, and bring other people along, and really organizing every single detail around that you can imagine. I mean, we have a list of things. We bring snacks and beverages ourselves. So we order them from Costco and pick them up to try to keep our costs down. It is a large amount of work. It's not as straightforward, but we want the experience for attendees to be seamless. We want them to arrive, connect, have a good time, and depart with a special feeling. And as we all know, like creating a special feeling behind the scenes, backstage, as Goffin would have us know, there's a lot of work in order for the front stage to feel amazing. And so that backstage work is really, it's quite substantial.
And let me stress that my intention was not to scare anyone off, but I thought it would be helpful to get a little bit of the ugly of it. But yeah, Bobbi.
Yeah, happy to. And I saw there were questions about the logistics. So to give you a sense of the in-person writing retreat that we host is 2 days of focused writing and essentially some pure social time before and after. So on a Wednesday night, we have a welcome dinner. The first year that was in my home on campus. This group is personal and we connect. And I really wanted to start off by saying, this is personal to me. Like, come into my home. I want you to, this is me coming as I am. You know, I dusted for everyone, but pretty much come in and let's make this intimate. Then it's a Thursday and Friday. We write. The morning starts with either a hike or a yoga session. So some of that time to just move and feel awe and reflect. We have a series of poems. So writing with 25 minutes of writing, 5 minutes of break for a few hours in the morning. We break for a 90-minute lunch. And then we do a few hours of poems again. We end in time. It's February in Malibu. So we end in time to see the sunset over the Pacific. That is the self-imposed time frame. I want that experience for everyone. And the first year we did dinners in restaurants around Malibu, which was really fun I love this little town, and it was great to bring people and get to show them different corners of Malibu. One thing that I changed after that first year was realizing that we were 30 the first year. We've been more like 50 the past few years. We like to talk to each other. And that means that we're both loud So inside spaces got a little loud. But also, I think our group does an amazing job of being inclusive. And so floating around. And so a restaurant where you have to sit for 2.5 hours was like a little too restraining. I mean, it was great to have deep conversations, but one change that I really love that we've made, which required some negotiating, was it turns out my university has a secret beach house that isn't totally secret. And so I had to get permission from the dean and do some begging. And I got access to the not secret. And so now we get to host our dinners there, and we have a food truck come. We find women-owned businesses. And so we get to float around in this house and sit on the beach. It feels like, the best of what you imagine Malibu to be. And also really fits our inclusive, fun, it fits so many goals. So there were some tweaks that happened over time. And then Saturday, we do a social day, which starts with breakfast at the beach house. We've done a surf lesson. We've done an art class. We've done a winery. We do dinners. We've done, after the fires, we did some volunteering at one of the relief associations. So that's hopefully an overview of the logistics. Some of the bad cost has been raised. So the first year, our interim dean gave me the entirety of his $10,000 interim dean budget. And so I was able to cover, once you got yourself to Malibu, all meals and everything was covered. That is not access. I was not able to get those funds in future years. And so now people have been paying, and it has been work to keep it under $400. So we are not profiting off this at all. I think that's important to say, but even so, to get, reserve space on campus to write, and then the beach house for dinners, and get all the food, and we keep swag limited, but we do something fun. We do different colored sunglasses every year, again, trying to communicate this is fun. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. We haven't done charades yet, but I'm inspired, Jan. So the funds are something, both because it's work to keep it under budget. Two, I just said to all of you how much I care about this being inclusive. And I recognize that for the, one dimension is just research funds that institutions offer. And so if we're going to keep this a setting that people from all sorts of institutions can come to, I do worry about the price. And so we do some things to, connect people so they can share cars, connect people so they can share Airbnbs or hotels. We're going to have the 5th annual this year. And so I will be going to the provost to ask for funds, because I think I'd like to be able to say we can at least comp some, but it's like taking time to think about and learn. And I feel actually bashful that it's taken me 5 years to be like, I need to push, okay, I can't get funds from here, but wait a minute, there are other sources I could go to. I don't know if that will work. So I think about downside is, maybe just the work, the funds, the fact that for me on the logistics, I host it at the same place every year. So that complication is somewhat resolved, but we had layoffs. And so this amazing woman the school did offer some staff support. She knew how everything worked. She got the vibe. I also happen to really like her. She is a friend, and she was laid off, which broke my heart and made me really frustrated. But it also meant then I had to, get someone else on board who meant well, and it was wonderful too. But there was a change or policy about the beach house. The secret beach house changed. And so now we have a new dean, and he's a guy, and he's required to be there for the whole event. And so I, have an awkward conversation with my new dean to be like, I just want to help you understand the vibe of the dinner. And so there are some logistics that are not, as much as we've gotten every detail, and I feel like I have this cookie cutter thing that I do every year that works. Changes happen that you have to roll with, and they do. It takes time. And I will say one last thing on just the a challenge is, I do want this to be, if you want to come, please come. And just communicating that is a message I have to repeat over and over again. So I've had so many women come up to me and say, I'd love to be invited one year. And I say, of course you can come. It's not an invite. I'll give you the info, but share it with your friends. And I keep saying that message over and over again, and I will keep saying it. But it does strike me that even some of those values, the things you want people to know, you may need to repeat them. That was a long download. I'm going to pause there.
I was going to say, first of all, Bobbi does, and I can speak to Bobbi. I'm sure Jon does equally, if not even more. But Bobbi does an amazing job on this conference, and it is Herculean effort. You can definitely tell it is a labor of love, but the labor part of it is a lot. And we joke in my house, the nightly beach house is known as the Malibu Barbie Beach House, and it truly is. It's magical, right? So hopefully that secret little place can stay that way. And the food trucks just add to the vibe of it. But I'll talk a little bit. Obviously, I'm not doing the in-person we've done has actually been. The first in-person we did is actually at another conference. And we did it because it was just an opportunity when COVID happened. It happened earlier. The MOBTS conference that some people might be aware of, teaching-based conference, but it was just logistically, a lot of our folks were able to go, everything opened up, we wanted to see each other in person. That was the first time I think about 20 of us met in person. And so I think meetings at conferences. Also, the other thing that has helped a lot is when the OB division started finding those little venues and inviting the micro communities to try to get together. And even though, the group has to be small, you'd love to be just open to everybody. Logistics and cost are definitely an issue, but it's just a chance for us to meet. And even those, you want to, on a little basis, you go, oh, how difficult is it to get 20 of your colleagues that you see on a regular basis to get together? And it's hard. And someone has to do it, in trying to figure out the logistics and the time. And everybody's got, sessions that conflict and all that. Again, having the structure from the OB division has definitely helped. But there's also been times we've tried to do it on our own. And again, I can only multiply that by 20 times if you're trying to do a whole in-person conference and trying to make sure that people are aware of it. And especially keeping it small enough is challenging. And I think, that's definitely one of the challenges. I think the other thing is, and Bobbi mentioned it, continual promotion. And especially in our Zoom calls, because there's a lot of people will come in our call for a season. They have something going on. They've heard about it from others. They come, they try it out. And that would definitely be something to anybody who's thinking about joining a micro community, starting their own. Try it out, see if it works for you. But the problem is then it ebbs and flows. And trying to keep that no, we're still here. We're still doing this. Having to constantly, okay, let me write I'll put the ad on Facebook to say, hey guys, here we are. And here's the link, and getting people that. And then, they'll see you at a conference a couple months later and go, wait a minute, you talked about this thing that you do. I lost the link, and those kind of things. So trying to make sure that it does continue, that there is these, and then even things like we have my other colleague who does a lot of the Zooms, she just had a baby, so she's been MIA for 3 or 4 months. We'll give her the pass. I'm hoping she'll. I think the baby's probably now about 3 or 4 weeks old, so maybe we'll see her in the next couple of weeks anyway. But it was kind of, you do have some folks that kind of hold down the fort and kind of make things to keep going, but you got to make sure you're replenishing that to keep your community strong. And to make sure those things happen. So that's definitely some of the challenges, even in the virtual space. The nice part about the virtual space, other than time, easy, very cost effective. And I think that's why it does work. And I think a lot of people that have come to the Zooms, which is a big reason of why Bobbi's retreat has happened, is that we want to meet in person, we want to do it. But yeah, cost is an issue, definitely, especially everybody's budgets seem to be shrinking. So.
Thank you for that. I suppose my last set of questions is just looking ahead, and you've already started answering this, but how do you keep a community sustainable with the ebbs and flows? And we also have a question in the chat from Huria about what's the right size, more so for in-person, I assume, but just in general, is there a thing that is too small or too big to sustain?
I guess I'll start just for the online stuff. Our Facebook group has like 1,200 members. Are they all active? No. I'm going to say there's probably a core of about 15 to 20 of us who are pretty stable as far as showing up on a regular basis. And I think you need at least probably, I'll say even starting out, I said the first group with Dolly, there was probably somewhere around plus or minus 20 of us. And there's probably about 4 or 5 of us from that original group who are still there. So if that gives you any idea, 5 years later, And again, other folks have jumped in, so at least we had a vibrant community to pull from, and I think that's part of it too.
Jon and I are
we're gonna stare off. I know, we're like, who is it? Who is it?
You go.
You're still unmuted, so you got to go.
Okay,
by the laws of Zoom.
Yes, fair enough. I should know these Zoom norms after all these mornings with Rita. So, in terms of continuing, one thing that we think about with the in-person retreat is that because this is a post PhD thing, constantly making sure that we are pulling in the new, just got their PhDs and DBAs with us. So I'm super delighted that Amanda and Sang-Ah are here, who are two of our first time attendees this year for the in-person retreat. They're both new assistant professors. So like one dimension that we are aware of is getting the next generation of assistant professors in the door, because with each year that passes, I keep getting older. And so I think whatever the boundary is, or the sort of entry point is to be attentive to in your group. In terms of sustainability, there's been some chatter about a European in-person retreat happening, which I'm in touch with them and very much support. And so I think one way that our in-person retreat will become sustainable is by it happening in more places. And so I'm really supportive of that. It's pretty easy to download. You just heard the itinerary. It's not like there are paper sessions that I need to be coordinating. So I think this is very replicable. If anyone on this call is thinking about doing an in-person retreat, I'm happy to talk more. And you also just heard a lot of what I have to say. So I think that's one way for it to continue. I think another way for it to continue is sort of where Jan started us, which is that like magical feel. And so I think there are some things, like to me, the connection, the fact that these are my friends, that we know each other as whole people, that's part of what makes this sustainable and keeps us coming back. So the little tweaks, like there are some things, I change the tables around every few writing sessions so people meet each other. And I spend time with that table assignment so that there is a range of junior and senior in geographies. And I break up friend groups, and I, teaching in research heavy institutions. So we do not have name institutions on our name tags, right? I want this to be about people meeting, not the like pecking order that happens with, no offense to broader conferences that need to have institutions on their name tag, all love for me. But, so thinking about some of these things about how do people feel, I actually think that a lot of what we've discussed is about the making it sustainable. And on the number question, our space will cap us out at about 70. I don't think the in-person retreat will ever become a 200-person conference. I think it would lose that magic. And so I haven't hit that hurdle yet. We'll see what, hopefully before we do, there are going to be more, another location or maybe another time of year. I think our group has gone very easily from 30 to 50. That still feels pretty cozy and intimate. I think we have a little bit of room to grow, but not a ton. There is something really, I think by definition, it's about keeping it where you feel like, everyone's names. There's a coziness to it. So for us, in the mid 50s with a little bit of room to grow, but not infinite.
I mean, just to build off Bobbi's point, oh gosh, we have these energy saving lights. I hate it. Every 15 minutes, if I don't move, they turn off. It's a really bad idea. Sorry. I think just different group sizes serve different functions. Like when you're a size of 30, everybody can be in the same room at the same time and listen to one another, and you can have multiple of these presentations while still workshopping something. Once it grows to something larger, like typically things end up splitting up into smaller groups almost naturally, where then, people kind of, when you go to like a smaller conference and now they have 2 or 3 tracks with talks going at the same time or something like that. So I think there's something very human about like wanting to keep it to a relatively manageable size. There ought to be some better research on that. Maybe one can do that research to try to figure out like what the optimal group size is. But it's not, I don't know whether like what the right group size is, but I think if it's, Chris, you have to do that research is what Maria says. I think that's right. But I don't think that there's a right group size. I think different purposes have different group sizes, and just being very thoughtful about what the purpose is and how to align with that. In terms of what's next for the May meeting, when Amy was running this, she had an administrative person, Bobbi, kind of like you were talking about, somebody who'd been doing this for many years, who helped her out, who unfortunately is no longer able to support us. We desperately need that person. And so figuring out a way to do that, you either have institutional support for hiring a person like that, or taking, a person who's currently hired by your institution and commandeering their time in that way. That requires support. Or you need to raise financial resources to hire somebody like that and pay them to do that. Both of these kind of hinge on institutional support or financial support, which is also the second peg of this, which is we need to figure out a way, I think, particularly in the current funding situation, to have a sustainable source of financial support that we more or less can rely on, like a pot of money that supports this micro community, to make it easier to organize. Because I think Kira and I stress every year, where's the money going to come from? And we're in the fortunate position, I think, last year and this year to have enough to not worry too much. But it's easy to extrapolate into the future and say, well, but what if we don't have easy access to funds? What if it becomes more challenging if our home institutions aren't able to support us anymore? Where is that money going to come from? Because I think, at least for the May meeting, there's something very special about people not having to pay to attend. Like you pay your own flight, but once you're there, kind of, it's like the seamless experience. We have experimented in recent years with charging a voluntary contribution if you have the financial resources to help make that available. So if you're at an institution that's more resource rich, or you're at a career stage where it's easier for you to part with a small amount of money, to attend a conference, we've been experimenting with doing that to have a new source of revenue. And I think that works. But I think to Bobbi's point, making it easy to access and lowering the barriers and saying, you don't need to pay to attend this conference. Like this conference is free, unless, making it free the default, unless you're able to pay more, in which case click on this link and pay us. And paying us, like, we're not making any money off of this. This is, if I was trying to make money off of this would by far be the worst way of making this. And I was a stock boy in high school, and as a stock boy, I would have made like 5 times that. So this is not a good idea to make money. But so finding a person to do that and raising the financial resources to make sure that this is sustainable over time, both of these are really important.
With your permission, why don't we switch to Q&A then? And I'm sure we'll get more of your helpful advice. And we can take it in the chat, or if someone wants to unmute, we're a small enough group, we'd love to hear your questions. This is always
I'd be very curious to hear thoughts in the chat on, would you do this early in your career? I'll rephrase the question that was asked in the chat, is to say, if you were early stage in your career again, would you advise doing this and launching a micro community?
I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, part of this is early in my career, much different, but similar. We had a group of us who all took jobs ABD. There's 4 or 5 of us. And Paul Silva has this great little book, How to Write a Lot, and he talks about an agraphia group, agraphia being the fear of writing. Anyway, and we got together and did every 2 weeks we met and, had goals and where were we at our goals and things like that. So I think, and I did that early in my career, got my dissertation done, and it helped me get some early publications, having a community around me. So I think that's where, when this opened up, here I flash forward 15 plus years later, I went, wow, I go back to basics. And I think just finding the right people, if you've got even just a few friends and you're going, we want to get our work done. I think especially something like the POM, kind of structure that we have, definitely would help. I think especially for early career academics, because your job is definitely, you got to get that work done. And if this structure provides it for you, and it, just like Bobbi said, I'm glad to talk to anybody who wants to. Please reach out if there's anything that we can help you with in structure and those kind of things.
Yeah, I think Rita had said earlier on that for her, this is a way that she likes writing. She would do this anyway. And so it's something that she can say, like, please come join me. And so I think if there's something that you want to be doing as a community or a topic, that it's like, you would be doing it, or you want to be doing it anyway, and this could enrich your experience, then by all means do it. I think I think there's no reason to wait. I'm not sure if it's quite a hesitation, I would say, but I also don't think you have to create it. Like, part of why this works is it's something I actually want in my day. So what I don't want to communicate to any early career researchers is that in addition to publishing and teaching and serving, you should also create a micro community. Like, this is not something that you have to add on, but I think if there is something in your day or the rhythm of your year that would make your day year better, then by all means, I don't think there's any reason you have to wait. And I do think there's been something very special about the peer experience, which I will add, if you're peers and you just stick together, eventually you're not so junior. And then you're a friend, a group of senior people. So by all means, don't wait because you're early career, but also don't feel pressure like this is one more thing you have to do.
Yeah, I think just building on what both of you have said, I think it's helpful. Equinox used to have this slogan that said "commit to something." The idea there is like we all have many things that we have to do. If this is one of the service things that you feel called to, that's great. You can do that. But then it's also a great excuse to then say, look, I'm already overburdened. I can't do these other things. So I think I'd be hesitant to use that as an addition and say instead, is this the way or one of the core ways through which you want to be a service member or get your service done? If this is something that you can get recognized, I think in a context is helpful. The other side of this is I always remember the late Kathy Phillips making it very clear whenever she talked to a PhD student or junior faculty that said, your job is to get tenure. You're of no use to anyone else if you don't have tenure. So go get tenure and then do everything else. And so, not to say that you can do this pre-tenure, but just to be, I think, a little bit more thoughtful and intentional about what you do and how you spend your time. So that, like, if this is a service community or service required, like your way of making a contribution to the field, that's a great excuse to then say, look, but that's the reason why I'm not doing other things.
Which I think captures or builds on this question in the chat, which is like, how is this service received by your department? And I will say that I think I've received so many kind words, like lots of affirmation and appreciation. My institution has helped me with a staff member whose time does some of these logistics and sets up a website. I actually am, wish me luck, everyone. I have raised with my department chair that this should count as my service instead of being on a committee. But like, we're on year 5. So this has not been, this was not like instant. Was it supportive? Like, emotionally, yes, but also is taking some legwork and is not a sure thing that, it has, and I will say this is not the first time I've asked it to count as my service. I'm just coming back. And so like, thank you, Jan. I appreciate it. So.
Yeah. And I saw that comment also. And I will say, my school tends to be kind of nitpicky at times for service. But when I went up for full, part of it was I'm part of an international group on a regular basis. I don't tell them it's my secret sauce that gets me, research productive. But boy, do I talk about, the institutions and the folks that I'm working with and everything else. And they are like, nope, that's great. Outside service, check. Not a problem, because they know it's something I do on a regular basis. And I talk about, I'm doing this 3 to 5 times a week. That's where it definitely has some double duty there. So if it's something I enjoy doing, I've got awesome, amazing people that I get to hang out with, like Bobbi and others. If you can find that win-win-win all the way through, and especially as an early career, don't do it as an ad, but if it's something that works for you, go for it. That's what we find out when we get older and later in our career, is find the things that truly give you some joy, even when it's the hard stuff.
Or find someone to co-organize with, like you don't have to do it all alone. And then you can just split the load.
I was trying to stop sharing on the Q&A, and I'm sorry about the black box. We'll fix that in a second. We've got about 4 minutes left. So any last pieces of advice? Selfishly, one quick question, if you have it at the back of your head, is anything we could have done as the OB division other than hand you a big bucket of money that would have helped with any of this? We'd love to hear that as well.
I like the idea of an expert service. Everything you've ever wanted to know about starting a micro community. Like, it's great to have it on a website. I think it's always nicer than have a person you can talk to about something like that and say, here's what it would look like and so on. Because I think that could be really helpful. Like, how do I find my people if I don't know who my people are? And how do you then bring everybody together and so on? I think just lowering the barriers to entry can be really helpful by just having a designated person you can.
I think it's been helpful to have where even to help organizing when we do have the conference and all of, we've got some blocks here. I mean, we lucked out in the WOB group that one of the OB division leaders was part of our group. And she's like, I got a spot. It's yours if you want it, when they were first organizing the micro communities. So I think having that there for folks, and it just helped because now, okay, great, we've got a spot, we've got, that structure, and I'll say it's very nice if y'all buy the coffee and the cookies or donuts or tea or whatever, even if that, is limited, having that structure of the spots definitely is helpful to organize, even if we have to get the $5 for this, tea ourselves.
I second these. And I guess I will also say that to some degree, what's nice about the micro communities is that there is a lack of structure and that you can play by your own rules and don't have to check with anyone if you can eat hamburgers on the beach and get different colored sunglasses. Like in some ways, I say this to the people thinking about starting their own, that there is some, the lack of direction, the lack of funds, the lack of oversight can also be a strength, because you get to do things with your own flair and flavor. And even, I think especially that this is a cross institution group is part of what helps us. Because sometimes the thing that we're talking about is the academy or is our institution. And it's somewhat helpful to be able to do that outside of those structures. So yes, absolutely to all of the support, and also to the people organizing, there is some opportunity in the rogueness, if I may put it that way.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Before you leave, Rita, we've got a request in the chat for the website for the Women of OB. If you have that handy, if not, maybe they can email you.
Have them email me because you do need an invite to go into the group. No, again, not that we're being, we do have our boundaries. So that's where I'll send, I have no problem sending you, it'll be a Facebook invite that you'll see. And then through that, or if I was going to say for folks that meet our criteria, if you want a link to the Google Calendar that for the Zooms, I can let you know that also. So just email me offline. Okay. I'll throw my email in the chat. So
thank you. And then contact information for all micro communities who have shared it with us is at this link. So I'll share that now. And with that, thank you all so much for your time, to the panelists, to the co-organizer, to all of you attendees. Thank you. Have a great day.